Welcome back to the table. Today, Ryan and I just played the Vale of Eternity. Truth be told, Ryan just played it for the first time.
That's true.
I played it for the third time. This is a game I had the chance to play with Tom Vassell and some of the other people that were at the World Series of Board Gaming last week, and I fell in love with this game. I really, really enjoyed it, so we were lucky enough to get a copy ourselves. Got it to the table with Ryan, and spoiler alert, I think he likes it too.
I do. I mean, it's a tableau builder with some serious combo potential.
Some chaos. Some crazy
real,
swingy things going on.
Some real crazy things. Again, this is one of those games where you look at cards and you're like, that card cannot be. This cannot be giving me the amount of points it's giving me or the amount of resources it's giving me or whatever. But for all of that, the game isn't super swingy. In fact, it is actually kind of tight. Because the game is limited in a few ways. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we talk about the game. But it has an interesting theme of like you're going to that vale.
Yes.
And you're hunting animals. And you're hunting these animals to either sell them for stones, which I guess is the currency they use down there, or you're taming them to bring them back to your tableau. And the way that those things interact with each other kind of does limit how you can play. So you do still have to be really strategic.
Yeah. And by hunting, do you think that when you sell a card, that's what we think it is?
I mean,
I don't know that
the phase is called hunting.
I think you're hunting as though you'd hunt for Easter eggs.
You're hunting and you're putting your markers on your targets.
But then you tame them.
You can either sell them or tame them. So
sell them or tame them. No animals are harmed in the making of this game, or monsters, or whatever these things are.
Yeah, they're like mythological creatures. They're all. Let's talk about that too for a second too, because you can kind of see our tableaus. We just finished, so we've got our tableaus right here. The artwork on these animals is phenomenal.
The artwork is fantastic. Now, artwork is a subjective thing, but for me, this artwork alone, not to mention some of the elements of the game, pushed a little of those Seasons buttons in me.
I can see that.
I don't want to say that it's just like Seasons. More on that in a little bit. But there's a lot of things about this game that push those same buttons for me, and the artwork was one of those. There's a ton of different cards in here in a variety of different families, which are effectively the different suits or the different colors of cards. And I really just love the way it looks.
Yeah.
And like Ryan said, you pick up some of these cards and you're like, wow, that's powerful. And it may cost more. And then even then, you play it, and it might even be a little more powerful than you thought, because like once it takes effect, given the other cards you have, you're like, oh my gosh. Am I supposed to get 15 points right now? Like
that's synergized really well. And if you build it into specific factions, those faction cards do kind of synergize with each other, but you can get some combos across factions. It's all about seeing what's out there, because in a two-player game, you're only getting 4 cards out in the Vale every round. So you're trying to look, and you're going to get 2 of them. You're guaranteed to get 2 of them, but you might not get the one you want. But you're trying to find synergies that maybe work with the combos that you've been building. And sometimes you might just get those sweet cards that just fit in right with what you've already got on the table.
Yeah, and Ryan mentioned some limitations. There are some unique limitations in this game. We'll get to that in a second. I want to just kind of walk you through a little bit about how the game flows. At the beginning of each round, and there's potentially 10 rounds, you're going to deal out a number of cards around this board here equal to the number of players times 2. So like Ryan said, we'll flip these, and you're going to place them where they're supposed to go. So I flipped over a pink card, flipped over a purple card.
A dragon card.
Dragon, sorry.
They're all elements.
Yes, we've got wind, water,
earth, fire,
and dragon, as you would guess. That one, and then a blue one. Now, I want to point out, even though there's 4 different colors here, they could have all been wind, and we'd have had 4 pink cards here.
And we had some turns where there were 3 at least of the same exact color out. Yeah.
So that happens. And you can notice it's not just the colors, but on each of those spaces, there's some currency here. These relate to these stones. The stones are the currency in the game that you're going to use to play cards into your tableau. Interesting thing here is there's 1s, 3s, and 6s. You don't make change ever. So if I'm playing a card that costs 2 and all I have is a 3, or worse yet, a 6, I am burning some of that currency to play that card when I want to. The other interesting limitation here is you can only ever have 4 of those tokens. So you're not making change, you have 4 of those tokens. So if you are ever to take more than 4, you have to immediately discard down to 4 of those tokens. Obviously, you might want to hold on to the 6s because they allow you to pay a little bit more. But with that said, there are plenty of cards in this game that really will benefit you, say, if you have a bunch of ones. Like you had a card that let you discard 1 for 3 points, right, at the end of the round?
Yeah, I did. And I did, because that brings me to some of the things I liked about it. But all of these cards, when you take them, you have to choose between that selling to get the currency or bringing them into your hand to later play them. And there's a lot of things that these cards do. They don't just necessarily just score points. A lot of them have lightning bolt effects that can have crazy effects. Some of them have ongoing effects that might make it better for you. So you might want to spend a 6 because it gives you points to use a 6. And then some of them give end of round abilities that trigger during the resolution phase of any round. So you're looking at the faction, you're looking at the cost, you're looking at all the different abilities, and then you're looking at your tableau to see if any of them kind of fit. So, and again, you're only getting 2 of them. So like it is a tough decision to make.
Plus, one of the things you're really looking at that may not be, noticeable at first glance are these values right here, because you might go, you know what, I really just need some currency. So instead of taming this card, I'm going to discard it and take a 6 token currency. As you can see, this one gives you 6, this one gives you 3 1s, 4 1s, 1 3, and this one gives you a 3 and a 1. So selling cards like that are what give you currency. So a lot of the game is going to be spent selling and taming and then hopefully playing. But before you get to any of that, you are hunting in this first phase, and everyone has 2 of these markers. And in turn order, it's going to be kind of a snake draft. So I'm going to claim 1, and then Ryan will claim 2 in a row, and then I'll claim another. And then in player order, me in this case, I would decide all the things I want to do. Like we said, I could tame these, and that's as simple as just taking my token off and taking the card into my hand. I could sell it, take the token off, and discard it for the currency. The other things you can do, though, are play cards into your tableau, or remove cards from your tableau, which isn't something that happens as much.
Yeah, it doesn't. You're limited by how many cards you can have in front of you to what the round number is. So we're in the 9th round. We could have had 9 cards. I actually was like below the value every single round, so I never needed to get rid of one. But if you had a bunch of like really small creatures that all had lightning bolts, I could see you wanting to get rid of some lightning bolt ones that aren't working anymore to add more lightning bolt ones, and you can just keep playing more cards that way.
Yeah, managing your tableau is a really real thing here. That's the other big limitation.
The meat of the game.
Yeah, people will often forget and play more cards into their tableau than where we are in the round. So if it was the 3rd round, anyone can only have 3 cards in their hand. If someone starts to play their 4th, you have to go,
Yeah, you
it's only the 3rd round. You got to put that back. Or, like Ryan said, you can remove one.
Yeah.
But it's a costly endeavor, and you want to make sure it's a card that's not really helping you in an ongoing way.
Yeah, and the cards that you're drafting, they do a huge variety of things. But if we're going to talk about what the cards do, I want to tie that in to who I think this game is for.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is definitely a game for me, because I like this kind of thing, and I think you do too.
I love it.
Finding these combos is so satisfying, and you have to work for them. It's not just necessarily, oh, you get this thing or this thing. Like, my guy wanted me to have the same amount of cards in play as I had in my hand. And if I did, I'd get points.
And that's during the resolution phase.
Right.
There's a lot of these cards that will fire off at the end, and you kind of look at all your resolution cards, and that's where it really feels more like an engine, because you fire that off, and there's a lot of prerequisites, like the one you just said.
And you do it in the order of your choice. So there were times when I had a card that would return to my hand. That was its trigger, so I'd return it to my hand. It would balance me out. I could get those 3 points. I had a guy that gave me 4 1s, and then a guy that spent a 1 to get 3 points. So I could always get them and then spend them. So that, and the fact that you can do them in your order of your choice makes it feel a little less restrictive. It's not like you're firing left to right. You can time them so that you get maximum value from your turn. And that is a very satisfying experience, like triggering all of these different cards. If you have a lot of cards, you might not have cards that triggered in the resolution. Your game, like David's game, was a lot of lightning bolts. And you got a lot of points from cards that just were instant effects.
Yeah, I would say flexibility with how you fire those off is a common theme throughout the game. And if you like that level of flexibility, so that when you have that engine and you want to play it off just like you want to, this is really going to be satisfying, because it doesn't always apply to just resolution, but even as you're taking your actions. I could take a card into my hand and then play a card so that I get my stone limit down before I sell the other card to get my stone limit back up. And you want to take that into consideration for sure, because that stone limit it's like this thing that makes it so you need to really take things in a certain order, so that you're not just playing cards or taking cards, or selling a card when you really can't take the stones in the first place.
Speaking of the stone limit and the flexibility of this game in general, for every rule that we just mentioned, we've seen cards that kind of break those rules.
Yeah, I had a card that let me keep 6 stones instead of 4 stones, which blows open the flexibility on that.
And we've seen cards that increase the value. If you use a 3, it counts as a 4. You use a 1, it counts as a 2. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of build your tableau to do a very specific thing. And that is, I think, the part you said earlier where you kind of get that Seasons vibe.
Yeah.
Even though the game is not like Seasons, that vibe of like building your combo, building your tableau really fits, I think.
For sure. This is, and that's the one thing I'd say. Anyone who likes a game like Seasons, or Seasons specifically, will like this game. Yeah. Is this game like Seasons? To some degree, but I wouldn't say that as much as I'd say, if you like Seasons, I can't imagine you not liking this. Or if you like, even just like Ryan said, just about any tableau builder, I don't see you not liking this. Another reason being, it's very quick to play. Yeah. This is not a long game at all. What did it take us, 40 minutes?
40 minutes?
Yeah.
That was with the teach even.
With the teach and Ryan's first game. 2 players who know what they're doing could burn through this game, and you get a lot of satisfying puzzling and tableau building, some engine building in that amount of time. And I don't think it outstays its welcome at all.
Now, to talk about who it's not for, this is definitely a chaotic game. There's a lot of just craziness. There's a big luck factor to it, which is fine when the game is, for me, when the game is this short. And you're just as likely to luck into a great card coming up on your turn than another opponent is. But you have to understand that, like, your combo is only as good as your combo is. Your opponents might draw cards out of the blue that just really enhance their combo, and then all of a sudden they're getting a ton of points, or they might get cards that mess with your combo, make you discard cards. So there is a lot of that chaos. You don't have a ton of you do have some control, but you don't have as much as maybe as some people might like.
You do have some you do have some control, and I would say the chaos is limited. You're mostly always getting cards from these face-up displays. So if they come out and you happen to be first player, and there's a card that really synergizes well, other players at the table are going to go, oh, great, you're going to take that.
Right.
There's very few options to draw cards. Now, there are a handful of cards that will let you draw cards off the top of the deck, so you might top deck into something. But that, again, that's half the time it's going to be something great, half the time it's not.
And there is definitely hate drafting that happens in this game, too, especially at 2 players. You can see, we're only looking at 4 cards, so it's like, oh, I can see that this one really helps David, and I'm first player, I'm going to take that one just to sell it. So you got to be aware that that is definitely a big part of the game. I know some people don't like that level, but that's where the real player interaction comes from for me.
Yeah, and I would also say if you like games that are fairly flexible in terms of your enjoyment factor at multiple player counts, this one's pretty good.
Yeah.
I've only played it at 2 players with Ryan. My other 2 games were at 3 and 4. Both of those...
You got the whole gamut.
I have the whole gamut. I don't think there's a solo game. But I think it plays well at all of those. With that said, I do think I personally like it the more players.
Yeah.
And generally I would like it best at 2 or 3. But this thing is really fun because the amount of cards that come out.
You get way more selection.
The selection during that draft is fantastic. And you know that you're going to have some options on your turn because in a 4-player game, there's 8 cards out there, which is pretty significant.
Yeah, I want to try that with 8. But even at 2, it doesn't feel like we're losing much playing it at 2.
Yeah. The game is going to wrap up once there's 2 endgame triggers at the end of the 10th round, or if someone hits 60 points or more during their turn, which I think in all the games I've played, it's gotten close. It's been like 8 or 9.
We were around 9 right when I crossed, and I got 61 points on my resolution.
During his resolution.
So if I had 1 point less, we would have played the 10th round.
Yeah, it was a really interesting game. He won 61 to 54, which again,
it was
pretty close. I had a card that actually let me kind of keep close, or if I was ahead, I'd lose points, but if I was behind, I'd gain points. So it was just kind of this sneaky card that just let me stay in the game. But yeah, that is the Vale of Eternity. If you have any questions at all, please make them in the comments below. We'll be more than happy to get down there and talk about it a little bit more. Until next time, of course, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.